So we're still dealing with a persistent electrical issue. Now, what we have before, we had to replace the positive and negative mains going to the engine and to the starter. And that helped out a lot as far as starting the car and making sure that our devices were receiving the proper voltage. But we also now are having problems with the alternator, where the alternator at the positive terminal is showing 14 volts, which is great, but at the battery it's only 12.8. So we're losing over 1 full volt in drop somewhere in this system. So we tested it though, and this is the strange, that when we tested the resistance in the wires, it shows no resistance. So that was a little problematic, not to find, I was hoping to find that it had resistance, just have to change the wire, but there is no resistance, so the wire is not showing that it's bad. So what we're going to do is the next step is that we're just going to jump the cable straight from the B plus to the positive terminal, and if that gives us 14 volts at the battery, we know without a doubt that we need to just replace the wire and the old one needs to go. This is the kind of thing that I'm finding in the car. Melted fuse holders, and I'm replacing them just to be on the safe side. Another thing that we're working on here on this car is the positive crankcase ventilation system. Usually you would find a terminal from the valve cover to the intake manifold, and that makes a lot of sense because you have vacuum pressure that'll suck out the oily air and put it into your combustion system. And also it has a nice, that vacuum is very handy, that it's actively sucking, not just air venting, which would cause the gases to build up. So, but this has turbo. So with the way they did it was they took this one of these main terminals, put it to the intake of the turbo, so you get suction power, and that also delivers it back around as compressed air into the intake and back into the combustion. And that also gives that's also an opportunity to suck in fresh air because the turbo is connected to the air cleaner. So right now we're going to test what am I getting from the alternator terminal. $14.54. Now I use jumper cables to jump it straight to the battery. And then here at the battery, I still got 13.36. So even going straight there with the cables, so I'm gonna have to start to think that it's the actual battery that's just sucking out all the juice and not letting the dang thing charge. I'm gonna put another battery in there and see if that does the trick. Cheers. Okay, so we just did a test where I was running the engine, and we tested from the alternator case to the negative battery terminal, and we got a reading of 0.9 volts, which is pretty much exactly what the voltage drop we're experiencing, where this is charging at 14 and that's charging at 13, and it's just not getting the charge that it needs. So that has deduced that there is a bad ground between the alternator and the negative terminal of the battery. The frustrating part is that I have a fresh, brand new grounding that's run over to this transmission casing where the ignition coil is. That's the stock grounding point right there. But somehow it's not getting from this, it's not transferring over through the engine to the alternator. So now we need to either manually do a ground strap from the casing itself to the engine somewhere and the chassis, and just double up on the grounding. So something's wrong with the ground. So what I think I'm going to do is this. That's the alternator right there. And the adjustment bolt sits on a brace. So I'm going to use that brace as the conductor, and I'm going to bolt in a wire here, and I'm going to run it to the intake manifold. We have a free bolt here, we have another free one here, and then I'm going to run it straight to the battery terminal. So we have the battery terminal grounded here at the ignition, and then that's going to be grounded to the intake, and that's going to be grounded to the brace for the alternator bracket. I'm going to remove this brace itself. So we removed all the components that were touching the ground from the battery. That's where the battery terminal first touches, right there on the left side of that ignition coil. Now on the right side of that ignition coil is a ground strap that I've attached then to the intake manifold, and then to the alternator tightening bracket, and every component in between until it gets to the alternator has been sanded down to bare metal. And I am getting much better readings with my multimeter, but let's go ahead and start it up and see if it actually made the difference.